Investors Business Daily reported on July 8th that the Justice Department has an investigation ongoing about biased banks, about lending in minority communities. And I was wondering, you've been an advisor to the Justice before under your testimony, and regarding the mortgage issue, the mortgage servicer issue. So I wanted to know if you're serving as an advisor for this investigation.
The Secretary of the Treasury asked us to get involved in the mortgage servicing issue.
I'm asking. You've already testified about that, but I was wondering about this bias bank investigation. It's been reported in the New York Times and the Investors Business Daily.
He has not asked us to be involved in that.
Okay,
I don't believe.
Now, in terms of, in my opinion, I think financial terms need to be accurately and correctly disclosed to individuals, and individuals can make their decisions based on whether or not they'd like to purchase the product. For instance, the one-page mortgage disclosure issue you mentioned in your testimony that you mentioned before, that I mentioned in my opening statement. I think that's positive. I think it gives individuals the terms that they need, and it's very similar to the legislation that I put forward a couple of years ago. So so disclosure, I think, is an important piece in all of this. Do you agree?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Now, in terms of what you see for the CFPB, do you think your actions mainly pertain to enhancing disclosures? Do you think that's going to be the core work of the CFPB?
Well, I think the best way to understand it is that there are multiple tools available in order to try to promote a functioning market. And there's no doubt that no market functions if people don't have meaningful and adequate disclosure. But I never want to back away from the part that a significant part of what we will do will be supervision and enforcement. More than half of our resources will go to supervision and enforcement over financial institutions to make sure that there's a cop on the beat, making sure everyone's following the rules. And that includes both banks and non-banks. And if you'll forgive me, I would also add to that, just because I think of this in terms of the central areas where we work, we also will have a significant responsibility on consumer financial education. We are required by Dodd-Frank to do that, and so, sir, we'll be doing that as well.
Now, do you think in terms of financial products do you see a financial product that's so complex that disclosure wouldn't be a remedy?
Yeah, it's a good and an interesting question, Congressman McHenry. I recall sitting in the House Financial Services during long testimony, and the question came up about banning products. And I remember that Ed Yingling, the then president of the American Bankers Association, said, yes, there are certain products that should be banned. I am less certain if that is true. I am a big believer in disclosure, meaningful disclosure, and I'd at least like to start with the concept of let's get out there and try some real disclosure, put some real power into the hands of consumers, and see if we can't get these markets working. I believe in markets.
Do you see a financial product out there today that needs to be eliminated?
I don't know of one, sir.
Okay.
But if you had a particular suggestion you'd like me to take a look at, or others to take a look at, and there may be others.
I don't have a $500 million budget, so I'd leave it to you and the 400 people working for you. In terms of, that's why I thought you'd have some ideas on this. Now, in terms of enforcement mechanisms with CFPB, beyond disclosure, do you think those enforcement mechanisms would prescribe terms going forward, meaning setting interest rates and fee structures?
No, sir, I think what enforcement mechanisms are about are making sure that the laws are properly enforced. And it's done, as I understand it, both through supervision and through direct enforcement. That is, if it can't be worked out otherwise, suing banks if they don't follow the law, or suing non-bank financial institutions if they don't follow the law.
But wouldn't part of the remedy be that they change their practices going forward in a way that you describe? For instance, in the mortgage disclosure issue that we're talking about, the mortgage settlement issue, that is a significant piece of this, prescribing terms going forward.
Yes, sir. That would be new regulations that would replace the older, complicated, more complex regulations that required higher regulatory costs for the financial institutions and probably produced a whole lot less value for consumers. And what we're going to do now, and I think what we've got, is something that is both cheaper for mortgage originators, for banks, particularly for community banks and credit unions, to issue, and produces more value for consumers. And it's a form, and they will be required to follow the form, just like, just like under current law, only it would be an easier and, we think, more effective form.
Ms. Maloney is recognized for 5 minutes.